Hello everyone. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment saying where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories like this. Now let's begin. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that presses against your ears when you know you shouldn't be alone. I was parked off a service road in eastern New Mexico, engine ticking as it cooled, windshield still warm from 12 straight hours of driving. It was close to 2 a.m. The radio had gone quiet on its own, just static fading into nothing, and I remember sitting there with my hands still on the wheel, waiting for some sound to come back. I'd hauled this route dozens of times. Same desert stretch, same cracked asphalt, same blinking tower lights in the distance. That night felt different the moment I shut the engine off. The darkness outside the cab didn't feel empty. It felt occupied, like something was standing just out of view, patient, watching me decide whether to step down or stay put. I checked my mirrors out of habit. Left mirror, nothing but road. Right mirror, same. Rear view, my own tired eyes staring back. I told myself I was just exhausted. Lack of sleep does strange things. Makes your thoughts stretch and twist. Still, I locked the doors. I don't remember making the choice. My hand just did it. I'd picked up the load late, that afternoon after another driver no-showed. Dispatch said it was a clean handoff, nothing unusual. Dry goods. Sealed trailer. Paperwork signed. But as I sat there, the thought came back to me. How the clerk avoided eye contact when he handed me the keys. How he rushed me out like he didn't want me there once the sun went down. A truck rolled past on the highway, headlights flashing across my cab for half a second. In that flash, I saw movement in my side mirror. Not a shape I could name, just the sense that something had shifted closer. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. No notification, just one short vibration, like someone testing the line. That's when I realized I wasn't wondering if something was wrong anymore. I was wondering how long it had already been wrong, and who else knew before I did. I stayed in the cab longer than I meant to, watching the mirrors like they might blink back. The air inside felt stale, thick with diesel and old coffee. My shoulders were tight, jaw locked, like my body had already decided something was wrong and didn't bother telling my brain. After a while, I told myself I was being stupid. Fear feeds on stillness. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped down onto the gravel. The sound of my boots hitting the ground felt too loud. It echoed out into the dark and didn't come back the way it should have. I swept the light across the trailer first. Seal intact. Lock untouched. But there was dirt on the metal that didn't match the rest of the road grime, like someone had leaned against it recently. I stood there longer than necessary, listening. Wind slid through the scrub brush. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then went quiet. Back in the cab, I checked my phone again. No missed calls. No texts. But the signal bars flickered like they couldn't decide whether to stay. I tried calling dispatch, just to hear another voice. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. That wasn't normal. Night dispatch always picked up. I left a message anyway, keeping my voice calm, like that might make everything else behave. When I hung up, the CB crackled. Not words. Just breathing. Slow and uneven, like someone holding the mic too close to their mouth. I waited, finger hovering over the button. "You on channel 9? I asked. My voice sounded thin, not like me. The breathing stopped. Then a click. Silence. I locked the doors again, even though I was already inside. That's when I noticed the passenger window wasn't fully up. I was sure I'd closed it. The glass was down just enough for cold air to slip through, carrying a faint smell I didn't recognize. Not diesel. Not dirt. Something sharper. Chemical almost. I rolled it up and wiped my hands on my jeans. They were shaking now. I kept thinking about the warehouse clerk, about the way he'd rushed me, about the missing driver. I pulled the paperwork from the dash and read it again. Same route, same destination, same drop time, but the previous driver's name was smudged, like someone had tried to erase it with their thumb. Another vibration hit my phone. This time the screen lit up. Unknown number. No message. Just a missed call that disappeared a second later, like it had never been there. I felt that cold crawl up my spine, the one you get when you realize you're not reacting anymore, you're being guided. I leaned forward, staring through the windshield at the dark road ahead, and it hit me then. Whatever was happening didn't start when I parked. It started long before I ever took this load. And somewhere out there, someone was waiting to see how far I'd drive before I figured that out. The headlights appeared in my mirrors without warning. Not passing, not slowing, just there, locked in place behind my trailer like they'd been following me for miles with their lights off. My chest tightened so fast it stole my breath. I checked the road ahead, empty. No exits. No shoulders wide enough to pull onto. Just black pavement stretching forward like it didn't care what happened next. The CB crackled again. This time there was a voice. Calm. Almost friendly. "You finally noticed," it said. I didn't answer. My hands were sweating on the wheel, heart pounding so hard it blurred my vision. The voice came back, closer now, like the driver was smiling. "You weren't supposed to stop back there." I sped up. The headlights stayed with me, matching every move. When I slowed, they slowed. When I drifted lanes to test it, they followed. I reached for my phone, but there was no signal at all now. Just a dead screen, and my reflection staring back, pale and scared. The realization hit me all at once, sharp and sickening. The missing driver hadn't skipped the load. He'd never finished it, and I wasn't the replacement. I was the continuation. The voice returned, quieter. "Dispatch won't answer," it said like a fact. "They already closed your ticket." My stomach dropped. That was something only an insider would know. Someone who'd seen the system. Someone who'd set this up clean, on paper, so it looked normal, so close I could see the outline of the grille. I felt trapped inside the cab, every sound amplified, the engine whining, my own breath coming in broken pulls. I thought about slamming the brakes, about swerving, about doing something reckless just to break the script they'd written for me. Then the voice said my name. Not over the CB. Inside my head, it felt like soft, certain. That's when I understood the worst part. This wasn't random. I hadn't been unlucky. I'd been chosen. Someone had watched my routes, my habits, my quiet way of saying yes to extra miles. They knew I wouldn't ask too many questions. The truck behind me flashed its brights once, like a signal. Ahead, the road dipped into a stretch with no lights at all. I drove into it because I didn't know what else to do, and the dark closed around me like a door locking from the outside. I don't remember deciding to turn off the highway. I just saw a narrow service exit at the last second and took it hard, tires screaming as the trailer fishtailed behind me. The headlights stayed on the main road. They didn't follow. That was the worst part. It meant they'd gotten what they wanted. I drove until the fuel light came on, then kept going anyway, hands numb, jaw aching from being clenched so long. When I finally stopped at a rest area near dawn, my whole body collapsed in on itself. I sat there shaking, staring at the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in the world. State police found me there. Someone had called in a report about an abandoned trailer blocking part of the highway miles back. Mine. The seal had been cut clean. Whatever I was hauling was gone. The paperwork in my cab didn't match the cargo anymore. Different weights. Different destinations. On paper, it looked like I'd stolen it. Dispatch said there was no record of the call I'd made that night. No record of the previous driver either. His name didn't exist in their system. It was like he'd been erased, and I was next in line. They questioned me for hours. I answered everything honestly, but my voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. I kept thinking about the headlights choosing not to follow me, about how easy it would have been for them to make me disappear too. They let me go eventually. No charges, no explanations, just a warning to be more careful. I went home, but the road came with me. Even in my own bed, I felt watched, like I'd stepped out of something unfinished. And whatever I'd escaped was still deciding what to do about that. I don't take extra loads anymore. If dispatch calls late, I let it ring. I don't park on quiet roads, and I don't trust paperwork just because it has the right stamps. The job used to feel simple: drive, deliver, repeat. Now every mile feels like a favor I'm borrowing, like someone could collect it back if they wanted. What stays with me isn't the truck behind me or the voice on the radio. It's how clean it all was. How many people had to look the other way for it to work? Someone at the warehouse. Someone in the system. Maybe more. They didn't need force. They just needed drivers who wouldn't ask questions and routes no one checked too closely. Sometimes I think about the missing driver. I wonder if he figured it out too late, or if he never knew at all. I wonder if he heard the same calm voice, telling him everything was already decided. There's no memorial for people like that. No closure. Just empty records and silence. I still drive, but I don't feel like I belong on the road anymore. At night, when headlights settle in behind me and stay there a little too long, my chest tightens the same way it did back then. I tell myself it's nothing. Most of the time, it is. But every once in a while, I think about that service exit, about how the headlights didn't follow. And the thought that keeps me awake is this: they let me go not because I escaped, but because I wasn't the one they wanted to finish with. I remember the way the dashboard clock glowed red against the dark, each minute ticking by louder than the engine. It was just after midnight somewhere in western Texas, the kind of stretch where the road goes straight for so long it starts to mess with your sense of time. I'd been driving solo for weeks, sleeping in short bursts, eating whatever didn't need heating. My body felt hollow, like I was moving on habit instead of choice. I noticed the car behind me because it didn't pass. It stayed back, far enough to be polite, close enough to be there. 10 minutes went by, then 20. Every time I adjusted my speed, it adjusted too. I told myself it was nothing. Late-night drivers do that sometimes. You fall into the same rhythm, same lane, same pace. The weird part was when I pulled into a truck stop to refuel, and the car followed me in. It wasn't a truck, just an old sedan with one headlight out, paint dull like it hadn't been washed in years. It parked 2 spots away from me, engine still running. I didn't see anyone get out. I stood there holding the fuel nozzle, pretending not to look, feeling that tight pressure build behind my ribs. Inside the store, the clerk barely glanced up when I paid. I asked him if he'd seen the car outside. He shrugged and said people come and go all night. His eyes kept flicking toward the window like he didn't want to talk about it. When I walked back out, the sedan was gone. Relief hit me so fast it almost made me dizzy. I finished fueling, climbed back into the cab, and pulled onto the highway. 5 minutes later, the single headlight appeared in my mirror again. That's when the thought crossed my mind, not panic yet, just a quiet, unsettling idea. This wasn't someone lost. This wasn't a coincidence. Whatever that car wanted, it wasn't the road. It was me. The longer it stayed behind me, the more my body reacted before my thoughts did. My shoulders crept up. My hands tightened on the wheel until my knuckles ached. I tried changing lanes again, slowing down, speeding up. Nothing worked. The car stayed back, that single headlight steady, like an eye that refused to blink. I called it in on the CB, keeping my voice casual. Asked if anyone else was heading east on that stretch. A couple of drivers answered, voices tired and uninterested. None of them mentioned a sedan. One guy laughed and said I needed more sleep. I laughed too, even though my stomach felt wrong. Another truck stop came up about 40 miles later. I told myself I'd pull in, grab coffee, reset my head. If the car followed again, then I'd know I wasn't imagining it. I took the exit. The sedan followed. This time, it parked right beside my trailer. The driver got out slowly. Middle-aged. Plain clothes. Nothing about him stood out except how calm he looked. No hesitation. No confusion. Like this was exactly where he meant to be. He nodded at me once, polite, almost friendly, then walked toward the building. Inside, he stood too close while I waited in line. Close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke on his jacket. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "Do you drive this route often?" he asked, like we were old co-workers. I didn't answer right away. When I finally did, my voice came out dry. "Sometimes." He smiled at that, small and quick. "Thought so." That was it. No explanation. He paid for his coffee and left before I could say anything else. I watched through the window as he got back into the sedan and drove off in the opposite direction. My legs felt weak with relief. I told myself it was just a weird encounter. People talk. People notice patterns. It didn't have to mean anything. 10 miles later, my trailer brakes jerked hard enough to pull me sideways. I managed to keep control and eased onto the shoulder, heart racing. The dash lit up with a warning I'd never seen before. I climbed down and checked the lines. One of the air hoses had been loosened. Not broken. Not damaged by the road. Unscrewed by hand. That's when I saw the mark on the side of the trailer. A fresh smear, like someone had rested their palm there. Too high up to be accidental. I wiped my own hand on my jeans, suddenly aware of how exposed I was standing there in the dark. When I got back in the cab, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. "You should have stayed at the last stop." I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until it went dark, knowing two things for certain now. Someone had touched my truck, and whoever it was didn't need to follow me anymore. They already knew exactly where I was. The road narrowed ahead, construction barriers forcing everything into a single lane. I slowed without meaning to, every sense stretched thin. My mirrors felt useless now. Whoever this was didn't need to stay behind me anymore. They'd already stepped inside my night. The sedan reappeared ahead, pulled onto the shoulder just past the barriers. Hazard lights blinking. As I passed, the driver stood outside, hood up, pretending to inspect the engine. He didn't look at me, but his hand lifted slightly, fingers brushing the air like a reminder. I felt something crack inside my chest then. Not fear exactly, but the sick understanding that this was intentional. Controlled. A mile later, my phone rang. Same unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. On the fourth call, I picked up without thinking. The line was quiet for a second, then his voice came through, calm and close. "You didn't check your cargo," he said. My heart slammed. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I pictured the trailer doors. The seals. How easy they'd been to reach while I was inside buying coffee. "Dispatch changed your paperwork," he went on. "Happens all the time. You sign, you drive. No one asks what's inside." He paused, letting that sink in. "You're clean if you finish the run. Or you're the problem if you don't." I felt trapped in the cab, the road pressing in on both sides. I told him to stop calling me. I told him I'd call the police. He laughed softly like I'd missed the point. "You already did," he said. "They won't find anything. Not unless you give it to them." The line went dead. I took the next exit and pulled into a way station that looked half abandoned. Lights on, but no movement. I ran to the back of the trailer, hands shaking as I broke the seal. Inside weren't dry goods. Inside were unmarked crates, strapped tight, no labels, no paperwork that matched. I didn't open them. I didn't have to. The weight suddenly made sense. So did the attention. Headlights washed over me from the road. The sedan slowed, then kept going. He didn't stop this time. He didn't need to. The choice was mine now, and that was the worst part. I stood there in the cold, realizing the betrayal wasn't just his. It was the system that handed me the keys and trusted I resealed it with shaking hands, knowing how pointless that was. My chest felt tight, like I'd swallowed something sharp. I sat in the cab for a long time, engine idling, staring at the dark windshield while my thoughts ran in circles. Call the police and become a criminal. Finish the run and live with it. Every option felt like I was stepping into someone else's plan. I drove to the nearest state line and pulled into a crowded rest area just before sunrise. I didn't sleep. I just watched people come and go, families, other drivers, normal life moving inches away from something rotten. When the highway patrol finally showed up hours later, I flagged them down myself. I told them everything. About the car, the calls, the cargo that didn't match the paperwork. They searched the trailer. By then, the crates were gone. The seal was still intact. The straps were still tight. On paper, the trailer was exactly what it was supposed to be. The officer looked at me the way you look at someone who's exhausted and saying too much. He asked if I'd been taking anything to stay awake. He suggested I take a break. No report was filed. No follow-up. The system closed around itself like nothing had happened. I quit that company a week later. No notice. Just left the truck at the yard and walked away. Sometimes I still think about the man in the sedan. About how calm he was. How confident. He never threatened me. He didn't have to. He just showed me how small my choices really were. I still drive, but not long haul anymore. Short routes. Daylight. Crowded roads. And I don't follow cars the way I used to, falling into pace without thinking. Because every once in a while, when a vehicle stays behind me a little too long, I remember that night and the unmarked crates. And I wonder how many drivers didn't stop at a way station. How many kept going, told themselves it was none of their business, and finished the run. I still think about that night more than I should. Not the car, not the man, not even the crates. It's the quiet way everything worked against me, without anyone raising a hand. The system didn't fail me. It used me. And that's worse than anything that could have happened on the road itself. I stopped taking long hauls. I stick to daylight routes now, familiar highways, crowded stops. But even then, I feel the weight of being watched, of someone knowing where I am before I do. Every unfamiliar number, every tailing car, every stranger too polite, it triggers that tight chest, that cold crawl down the spine. Sometimes I wonder if the missing drivers, people before me, realized the pattern too late. Did they see the calm, the quiet control? Did they understand how little choice we actually have once the cargo is set, the route assigned, the seals signed? I don't know. I only know I was lucky. Or at least, I think I was. The lesson I carry isn't about vigilance or caution. It's about trust, or the lack of it. You can't trust paperwork. You can't trust dispatch. And sometimes, you can't even trust that you'll be the one to survive. Every time a sedan appears behind me with a single headlight, I check my mirrors instinctively, even though I know it's probably nothing. But a part of me remembers, and that part will never forget. Being chosen once is terrifying enough. Being chosen twice might not be luck at all. The first time I noticed it, I thought I was imagining things. I'd parked at a rest area outside Albuquerque, just after midnight, trailer loaded and engine cooling. The desert air was sharp against my face when I stepped out to check the tires, but that wasn't what made my stomach tighten. It was the shadow moving just beyond the perimeter lights. Too still to be an animal, too purposeful to be a trick of the light. I climbed back into the cab and locked the doors, shaking more than I realized. The silence inside was different from the silence outside. It pressed down, almost alive, as if it was waiting for me to breathe wrong. My hands fidgeted with the keys, my mind running through every stop I'd made that day, every person I'd passed, every truck that had rolled past without a sound. Nothing explained the feeling that someone, or something, had been standing just out of reach, waiting. I turned on the CB to hear other drivers, anything to break the quiet. Just static, then a brief hiss, like someone had leaned on the mic and let it go. I told myself it was nothing. Fatigue. A long stretch of highway with no rest. But the hair on my neck kept pricking, my eyes scanning the mirrors, even though I'd already locked the doors. The weirdest part was the smell. Not diesel, not rubber, not dust. Something metallic, almost coppery, carried on the wind. It lingered in the cab after I rolled the windows up, subtle, just enough to make my stomach churn. I tried to shake it off. I tried to convince myself I'd parked far enough from the highway lights. I was wrong, because in the rearview mirror, a truck I didn't recognize appeared on the horizon. Not approaching, just waiting. Headlights dimmed low, hugging the road as if it knew I was watching. And that's when the memory of the first stop earlier that day hit me. The driver who had handed off the paperwork with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I should have noticed something then. I didn't. I stayed in the cab longer than I meant to, heart hammering, watching the unfamiliar truck in my mirrors like it was part of the road now. Every time I blinked, it seemed closer, though the horizon hadn't changed. I tried telling myself I was tired, sleep-deprived, maybe even paranoid. But the feeling in my gut didn't lie. Something was off. When I finally forced myself out to stretch, the desert wind hit me like a wall. Gravel crunched under my boots, loud enough to make me flinch. I circled the trailer, flashlight cutting slices through the darkness. The seals were intact. Nothing seemed moved. And yet, there were scuff marks on the steps, fresh, not dirt, not wear from tires, like someone had leaned heavily and then vanished. Back in the cab, I checked my phone. Dead. No signal. Not unusual in the desert, but combined with the truck, the marks, the smell, my throat tightened. I tried the CB again, calling the nearest driver. Anybody else near I-40? My voice sounded small even to me. Static answered. Then faintly, almost hidden, the whisper of a voice. You shouldn't have stopped. I froze, eyes darting to the mirrors. The truck was closer now, headlights grazing the edges of my trailer. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe another driver, maybe a long haul heading east. But when I leaned forward to look, I saw movement. The silhouette of a person stepping down from the cab, slow, deliberate. They didn't look around, didn't wave, just paused, glanced at my trailer, and moved on. I locked the doors again. My hands shook. My thoughts were scattered, running faster than my body could follow. Every noise, the engine's cooling hiss, my heartbeat, the wind, felt amplified. I remembered the handoff from the warehouse that morning. The man smiled too easily. Paperwork done too quickly. The kind of smile that made you want to look away. Then came the second sign. My trailer doors. Not open. Not tampered with. But a faint scrape along the locking bar, barely noticeable in the dim interior light. Whoever had been here wasn't sloppy. They'd left no evidence that would survive a casual inspection, no fingerprints, nothing to point at them. But the message was clear. They had been inside, and they knew I'd notice. I started driving again, route memorized, but my mind was elsewhere. Every mirror check, every glance at the dark horizon was a reminder that the desert wasn't empty. And the worst part was knowing that whoever had been inside my trailer, or watched me the entire day, wasn't done. They didn't need to follow me closely anymore. They had already seen everything that mattered. I'd been driving for hours when it happened. The highway stretched straight ahead, no exits for miles, nothing but dark asphalt and faint desert light. That's when the truck appeared in my mirrors again, impossibly close, like it had jumped ahead without me noticing. Headlights low, grille reflecting the faint moonlight. My stomach dropped. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached. Then the CB crackled. Not static this time, words. Calm. Precise. You're carrying more than you know. My blood went cold. I swallowed, tried to answer, but my voice stuck. Who is this? I managed. The line went silent. Then the voice again, closer, almost inside my head. Keep driving, or it will keep you. I slammed my foot down on the accelerator, weaving slightly, testing the truck's pace. It mirrored every move. Brakes, lane changes, even my turns. Whoever was behind this didn't need to get out. They didn't need confrontation. They had control. A sharp vibration ran through the trailer. I swerved just in time to keep from losing control. The rear doors rattled. Nothing else. I pulled onto the shoulder, heart pounding, and climbed down to inspect. Airlines tight, locks intact. Nothing seemed out of place. And yet, I knew it had been touched. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared, short and simple. Check inside. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to keep driving, to escape, to call someone. But I had to know. The trailer doors opened, and inside, crates I didn't remember loading were stacked neatly, unmarked, heavy. My head spun. On paper, my load had been mundane. The reality was something else entirely. The headlights in the mirrors flared one last time, as if punctuating the moment. Then the truck fell back, leaving me alone on the empty highway. I stood there, shaking, staring at the crates. Not just a nightmare. Not just paranoia. Someone had orchestrated everything, and I'd been pulled into their game. I understood the worst part. This wasn't random. I hadn't stumbled into danger. I'd been chosen. I shut the trailer doors and locked them like it might undo what I'd just seen. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I sat back in the cab for a long time, engine idling, trying to slow my breathing while my thoughts kept looping the same question. What happens if I keep going? I didn't wait for an answer. I drove straight to the nearest way station, lights on, cameras everywhere, the kind of place that feels boring and safe. When I pulled in, the sun was just starting to come up, washing the desert in pale orange. It should have made me feel better. It didn't. I reported everything. The truck, the messages, the crates that weren't on my manifest. The officer listened without interrupting, then walked back to inspect the trailer. When he opened it, my stomach dropped. It was empty. No crates. No straps. No marks on the floor. Just the load I was supposed to be carrying, stacked exactly the way the paperwork said it would be. Clean. Ordinary. He looked at me carefully, the way people do when they're deciding whether you're lying or losing your grip. He asked how long I'd been awake. If I'd taken anything to stay alert. If I was under stress. They let me go after a few hours. No report. No investigation. Nothing to follow up on. On paper, nothing had happened. I finished the route because I didn't know what else to do. But the whole drive, I felt hollow, like something had been taken from me that didn't show up on any checklist. Every mirror check made my heart jump. Every unfamiliar truck felt too close. By the time I parked that night, I wasn't scared anymore. I was numb. I still drive, but nothing feels the same. Every mile is measured now, not by distance, but by how much control I still have. The highway doesn't feel like freedom anymore. It feels like a cage with mirrors and headlights instead of bars. The crates never reappeared. The sedan never followed again. On paper, I delivered exactly what I was supposed to, and yet I know the truth. Someone had set it up. Someone had watched. Someone had decided whether I would see it, whether I would survive. That knowledge doesn't fade. It lingers like the metallic smell in the cab that night, subtle and sharp. I wonder about the people before me. How many drivers noticed too late? How many just signed the paperwork and drove on, never realizing they'd been a part of it? And the ones who didn't survive? I don't want to know, but a part of me does. I tell myself it's luck that I made it through, that I didn't push too hard, didn't stop too long. But luck doesn't explain everything. Someone had chosen me. Someone had pulled the strings while I drove along, thinking I was free. Now, even when the highway is crowded and the sun is up, I check the mirrors. Every tailing car, every shadow on the shoulder, every sudden vibration in the trailer sends a shiver down my spine. Because I know it could happen again. And next time, maybe I won't be the one who gets to walk away. The radio cut out right as I crossed into northern Arizona, the sound dropping so suddenly it made me flinch. 1 second there was a low country song humming through the cab. The next it was just the rattle of the engine and the wind pushing against the trailer. I reached for the knob, tapped it twice, but nothing came back. Just dead air. It was close to 1 a.m., the kind of hour where your thoughts start drifting into places you don't fully control. The road climbed slowly, dark mountains on both sides, no lights except my own. I'd been running behind schedule all day after a delay at the yard. Dispatch kept messaging, pushing me to make up time, reminding me how tight the drop window was. I remember feeling irritated, not scared. Not yet. I pulled into a small pull-off to check the straps. The moment I killed the engine, I felt it, that awareness you get when you're no longer alone, even if you can't see anyone. The night felt crowded, heavy, like the dark was leaning in. My flashlight beam shook as I walked the length of the trailer. Everything looked fine at first. Straps tight, doors sealed. But when I reached the back, I noticed something that made my stomach sink. A second set of footprints in the dirt. Fresh. Not mine. Too close to the doors to be accidental. I stood there longer than I should have, listening. No voices. No engines. Just the wind scraping across the rocks. I told myself another driver must have passed through earlier. Maybe a security check. Maybe nothing. I wanted it to be nothing. Back in the cab, I locked the doors and checked my phone. No signal. No new messages. But the dispatch app still showed my location, blinking like an eye that wouldn't close. That's when a message came through anyway, delayed and out of order. Don't stop again. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, trying to remember if dispatch ever talked like that. They didn't. I pulled back onto the highway with my pulse still racing, eyes glued to the mirrors. The message stayed on my screen like it had weight. Don't stop again. Dispatch had never sent anything like that before. They used templates. Cold, clean language. ETAs. Warnings. Not commands that sounded personal. I tried replying. No delivery. The signal bars flickered once, then vanished. The road curved deeper into the mountains, cutting me off from whatever comfort I thought I had. Every few miles, I caught movement on the shoulder, too quick to focus on, gone as soon as I turned my head. Probably animals, I told myself. Probably. The next message came through without a sound notification, like it didn't want to announce itself. You already wasted time. That one hit harder. It meant someone was watching my clock, watching my choices, not just my location. I called dispatch the old way, through the cab system. It rang longer than usual before someone picked up. The voice on the other end sounded right, used my name, confirmed my load number. I started to relax until I mentioned the messages. There was a pause, just a beat too long. Then the voice said, "Focus on the road. You're almost clear of the slow zone." Something in their tone felt off. Too smooth, like they were reading instead of responding. I asked them to repeat the last message they'd sent me. Another pause. Then, what message? I hung up without saying goodbye. A few minutes later, headlights appeared behind me. A truck, riding close but not aggressive. Close enough to feel deliberate. I changed speed. It matched me. I changed lanes when I could. It stayed with me. My palms were slick with sweat now, my jaw tight. The dispatch app updated again. My drop time had changed. Earlier. Impossible. I hadn't requested it. The route line redrew itself slightly, nudging me toward a secondary highway I never used. No construction notice. No explanation. Just a new path, blinking insistently. I felt trapped between what I could see and what the system was telling me to do. Ignore it and risk penalties. Follow it and go somewhere unfamiliar, alone in the mountains, with someone clearly paying attention. Then I noticed something that made my breath catch. The truck behind me had the same company logo as mine. Same faded lettering. Same numbers on the door. I'd never seen that unit before. The radio crackled suddenly, startling me. A voice came through, low and steady. "You missed the turn." It wasn't dispatched. And it wasn't a question. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I ignored the voice and kept driving straight, hands locked on the wheel. The radio crackled again, louder this time. "You're off route," it said, calm but firm, like a supervisor correcting a mistake. "Pull over at the next turnout." The truck behind me moved closer. Too close. I could see the driver's silhouette through the windshield now, head steady, eyes forward. No flashing lights. No horn. Just pressure. Quiet, controlled pressure. The dispatch app refreshed on its own. A new message appeared. Vehicle inspection required. The road sign ahead confirmed a pull-off less than half a mile away. No other exits. No shoulders wide enough to stop safely. The mountains pressed in on both sides like they were closing ranks. The other truck swung in behind me, blocking the exit. Gravel popped under my tires as I came to a stop. My chest felt hollow, like the air had been sucked out. I locked the doors without thinking and watched as the other driver stepped down. He was wearing my company's uniform. Same jacket, same patch, but I didn't recognize his face. He didn't approach the cab. He went straight to my trailer, flashlight already in hand, like he'd done this before. Like this was routine. I shouted through the closed window, asking for his badge number, his name, anything. He didn't answer. Just tapped the trailer door twice, slow and deliberate, then spoke into his radio. Seal intact. Driver compliant. My phone buzzed. Another message. Good choice. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about inspection, or safety, or schedules. This was a test. Obedience. They weren't checking the cargo. They were checking me. The man climbed back into his truck. Before he closed the door, he finally looked up at my cab. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, there was no anger there. No threat. Just certainty. The engine roared to life. The truck pulled away, leaving me boxed in by the mountains and the silence. I sat there shaking, realizing how close I'd come to doing the wrong thing. Not illegal, not reckless. Just refusing. I stayed parked long after his truck disappeared around the bend. My hands were numb. Fingers locked around the steering wheel like it was holding me upright. The silence that followed felt heavier than the confrontation itself. No radio, no messages, just the wind sliding down the mountains and the ticking of my engine cooling. When I finally drove again, I didn't follow the rerouted path. I stayed on the main highway, even though the app kept flashing warnings, late arrival, non-compliance, potential penalties. Each alert felt less real than what had just happened. Whatever system had been watching me had already made its point. At the next town, I pulled into a crowded fuel station and didn't leave the cab for a long time. I watched reflections in the glass, listened to other drivers talk and laugh. Normal sounds, normal people. It felt unreal, like I'd stepped out of something hidden that most people never see. Dispatch called later that morning. A different voice this time. Confused. Asked why I'd gone off route. Asked why I'd delayed. When I mentioned the inspection and the other truck, the line went quiet. Then they said there was no record of it. No inspection logged. No unit assigned to that area overnight. I finished the delivery hours late. No one said much when I dropped the trailer. No write-up. No explanation. Just a quiet note added to my file about route deviation. That night, lying in the cab, I kept replaying the moment I'd taken the turnout. How natural it had felt to obey. How close I'd been to accepting that this was just how things worked. I still work for the same company. I never filed a complaint. I never told another driver what happened that night. Not because I don't think they'd believe me, but because I don't know who they'd tell next. Silence felt safer. That alone scares me. The road didn't change after that. The mountains are still there. The routes still redraw themselves on the screen. Dispatch still sounds calm and helpful. But now I understand something I didn't before. The system isn't just about moving freight. It's about control. About seeing how far you'll go without asking why. Every time my phone buzzes while I'm driving, my stomach tightens. Every reroute feels personal. I catch myself obeying first, questioning later, and that's the part one hate the most. Whatever they tested that night, I passed. And I don't know what that says about me. I think about the other drivers with the same logo on their doors. How many of them have taken that turnout without thinking? How many learned, like I did, that refusing isn't always the dangerous choice, sometimes complying is. There's no proof anything happened. No record. No witness. Just a quiet understanding that the road watches back, not through something supernatural, but through people and systems that know your habits better than you do. I still drive. I still follow most instructions. But every now and then, when the route changes for no clear reason, I keep going straight. And I wonder who notices. I was already tired when I picked up the load, the kind of tiredness that settles into your bones and makes every decision feel slower than it should. The yard was nearly empty, lights buzzing overhead, painting everything in a dull yellow glow. The dispatcher on duty didn't look up when he slid the paperwork across the counter. He just pointed where I needed to sign. The trailer was already hooked when I got there. That should have been convenient. Instead, it made me uneasy. I liked seeing things done from start to finish. This time, it felt like I'd arrived in the middle of something. I pulled out just before midnight, heading north through a stretch of back roads I didn't usually take. The GPS insisted it was faster, shorter, more efficient. After an hour, I stopped questioning it and let the road carry me. Trees closed in on both sides, tall and dark, blocking out the sky. No towns, no cell service, just the engine and the hum of tires on asphalt. About 40 miles in, I noticed the weight shift. It wasn't dramatic, just a subtle sway in the trailer that didn't match the curves of the road. I slowed down, thinking maybe the load had settled. Then it shifted again, heavier this time, like something inside had leaned. I pulled over at the first safe spot I saw, heart beating harder than it should have. When I stepped out, the night felt too still. No insects, no wind. My flashlight cut through the trees and landed on the trailer doors. One of the seals was broken. Clean cut, not worn, not old. And that's when I heard it. A dull, hollow sound from inside the trailer. Not a bang, not a scrape. Something like someone knocking, slow and careful, from the other side. I stood there frozen, flashlight shaking in my hand, listening. The sound came again, soft, deliberate. 3 slow taps, spaced out just enough to feel intentional. My throat went dry. Every thought in my head tried to outrun the one truth forming underneath them. This wasn't a load problem. This wasn't equipment. Whatever was inside that trailer was alive. I backed away without meaning to, boots crunching too loud on the gravel. The woods pressed in on both sides of the road, tall and black, swallowing the beam of my light. I told myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe the cargo shifted. Maybe air pressure. Maybe my exhaustion was filling in the gaps with something worse. But the broken seal said otherwise. So did the weight. So did the way the knocking stopped the moment I stepped closer again, like whoever was inside was listening. I climbed back into the cab and locked the doors, breathing hard. My phone had no signal. The GPS still showed the same narrow route, no towns for miles. I tried calling dispatch through the truck system. It rang, then cut off. I tried again. Nothing. The silence felt deliberate, like the road itself had decided not to help me. Another knock came, louder this time, followed by a voice. Muffled. Weak. I couldn't make out words, just the shape of them. Pleading. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I leaned forward, forehead against the steering wheel, trying to think. Call the police. Turn around. Drive straight to the nearest station. Every option came with the same fear. Whoever put this in my trailer would know. Headlights appeared in my mirror. A van rolled up behind me, slow and unmarked, stopping just far enough back to feel intentional. The engine stays running. No one got out. I watched the driver's door in the mirror, waiting for it to open. It didn't. Instead, my phone buzzed once. No notification. Just a vibration. Then a message came through the truck's display, not my phone. Short. Cold. Close the doors. My hands started shaking again. I checked the mirrors. The van's headlights stayed steady, washing over the trees and the side of my trailer. I realized then how exposed I was. One truck. One road. No witnesses. No signal. And whatever was inside that trailer had already made me part of it, whether I wanted to be or not. The knocking started again, faster now. Desperate. I sat there, caught between the sound behind me and the headlights watching me, understanding something too late. This route wasn't faster by accident. And I wasn't the first driver to stop here and hear that sound. My chest felt like it was going to tear open. The knocking turned into scraping, something heavy shifting its weight against the metal walls. I could hear breathing now, ragged, panicked, too close to ignore. Every instinct in me screamed to open the doors, to do something human. But the van behind me didn't move. It just waited. The message flashed again on the truck's display. You're running late. That was the worst part. Not the threat, not the situation. The routine tone, like this, was just another delay to manage. I stepped out of the cab anyway. The night air felt colder now, sharper. I raised my flashlight and walked toward the trailer, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. Who's in there? I shouted, my voice breaking. The knocking stopped. For a second, there was only silence. Then a voice came through the metal, clearer this time. Please, it said. Just one word. Weak. Barely holding together. The van's engine revved slightly. A warning. I stood there shaking, the beam of my flashlight bouncing between the broken seal and the trees beyond. I thought about my name on the paperwork. My signature. How clean it all looked on paper. How dirty it was in real life. I reached for the latch. Before I could touch it, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. A calm voice filled my ear. "If you open that trailer," it said, "you'll finish the route in handcuffs. If you don't, you'll finish it alive." My knees nearly gave out. "There's someone in there," I said. "They need help." The voice didn't change. There was someone in there. The van's headlights flared brighter, blinding me for a second. When my eyes adjusted, the scraping had stopped. The breathing was gone. Just silence slowly, and cold tears burning my eyes, realizing the choice had already been made for me. Not by fear, but by how small they'd made my options feel. And I hated myself for understanding exactly what they meant. I climbed back into the cab and locked the doors like it might keep the sound out of my head. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the truck moving. The van pulled away first, disappearing down the road like it had never been there at all. No hurry, no fear, just done. I drove the rest of the route in one kind of numb haze, eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I didn't stop again. I didn't check the mirrors. I didn't listen for anything from the trailer. The silence back there felt heavier than the knocking ever did. When I reached the drop yard just before dawn, everything looked normal. Too normal. The guard checked my paperwork, waved me through without a glance. The dock crew opened the trailer while I stayed in the cab, staring straight ahead. I never saw what was inside. I didn't ask. No one said a word. The paperwork cleared clean. No delays. No notes. According to the system, the load was exactly what it was supposed to be. Nothing missing. Nothing extra. I sat there long after they unhooked the trailer, feeling hollow, like something had been carved out of me and smoothed over. I kept waiting for sirens. For questions. For someone to tell me I'd done the right thing or the wrong thing. Nothing came. I drove away as the sun came up, the trees thinning out, the world slowly filling with normal sounds again. But I didn't feel relieved. Just a heavy, quiet guilt that settled in my chest and stayed there. I still replay that moment more than any other part of my life. Not the knocking. Not the van. The moment my hand hovered over the latch, and I realized no choice I made would leave me clean. People like to believe there's always a right thing to do. That belief doesn't survive roads like that. I quit long haul a month later. Told people it was burnout. That was easier than explaining the way silence can feel heavier than noise. Easier than admitting I still listen for sounds that aren't there, especially at night. Sometimes I wake up convinced I hear tapping, slow and careful, like someone making sure they're heard. What stays with me isn't fear. It's understanding. Someone built a system where fear does the work for them. Where drivers don't need to be threatened, just show the consequences once. After that, compliance becomes automatic. Quiet. Invisible. I don't know if there was ever a way out of that night. I don't know if opening the trailer would have saved anyone, or just erased me along with them. That's the part that never settles. Not knowing. The way it eats at you in small, patient pieces. Every time I pass a truck on a dark road, I wonder what's riding behind those doors. And every time I see a driver hesitate at a pull-off, I wonder what sound they're pretending not to hear. Because the worst horror isn't what was in that trailer. It's knowing how easily I learned to drive away. The rain started as I merged onto the interstate, just a light drizzle at first. Then it turned sharp, stabbing the windshield, coating the wipers in a rhythm that made everything inside the cab feel too loud. The night was black except for the reflections of my headlights on wet asphalt. I should have slowed, should have pulled over, but the delivery was already late, and dispatch's voice was still in my head. Make up time. I noticed the car almost immediately. Not beside me. Not behind me. Far off, in the reflection of my mirrors, moving in the same pattern as I was. I blinked. It stayed. Every time I switched lanes, it matched me. Every time I adjusted speed, it mirrored me exactly. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. A local driver just followed the highway rhythm. But something about the way it didn't pass, didn't lag, didn't blink its lights, made my chest tighten. There's a difference between being watched and being studied. I could feel the difference through the hum of tires on wet pavement and the occasional spray hitting the windshield. When I pulled into a rest stop to check the trailer straps, the car followed. Parked 2 spots over, engine running, rain dripping off the hood. No one got out. The wipers still moved in the rhythm of the storm, keeping the windows clear, but the interior stayed dark. Inside, the clerk barely glanced at me, and I couldn't tell if it was my nerves or the storm making me imagine movement outside the glass. When I stepped back into the cab, the car was gone. I exhaled, relief washing over me. 10 minutes later, in my mirrors, the headlights reappeared. And that's when I realized the storm wasn't the only thing following me tonight. I stayed on the highway, heart hammering, eyes darting between mirrors and the road. Every drop of rain felt louder now, like it was counting my mistakes. The car stayed behind me, headlights dim but steady, never passing, never falling back. I tried changing lanes, slowing and speeding. Nothing worked. It matched me perfectly, like a shadow attached to the asphalt. The trailer felt heavier, though I knew it wasn't. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Every turn, every rise and dip of the road, the reflection of those headlights made it impossible to ignore that someone, or something, was paying attention to everything I did. I called dispatch, hoping for the comfort of human voices. Static. A cough, faint, then silence. I tried again. No answer. Just the low hum of tires on wet pavement. I reached the next rest stop and pulled in cautiously, praying the car would keep going. It didn't. Engine running, lights flicked faintly off the rain, parked 2 rows behind me. I didn't get out at first. I just sat in the cab, listening to the rain and my own shallow breathing. Finally, I walked around the trailer, checking the straps, the doors, and the seal. Everything looked fine. Nothing seemed tampered with. And yet the feeling didn't leave, the kind that crawls up your spine and lodges in your stomach. I walked back to the cab, and at that moment, the car's headlights disappeared. Relief hit like a wave. I started the engine, thinking maybe it had left. The moment I merged back onto the highway, the lights reappeared, closer this time, as if the brief absence had been a warning. My stomach dropped. A subtle movement in the mirrors, enough to make me flinch, just a shadow of motion behind the glass. Then the first message came through my phone. Unknown number. You're making this too easy. I stared at the screen, rain pounding the roof, hands frozen on the wheel. Whoever was behind this knew my route. They knew when I stopped. They knew when I breathed. And I had no idea how far they were willing to follow me, or what they wanted from me. I pressed the accelerator, trying to put distance between us, but the car stayed, headlights slicing through the darkness. Panic settled in like a living thing, crawling along my spine, making my arms heavy and my mind sharp, too sharp. Every exit, every shoulder, every turn became a choice. One wrong move, and I knew I wouldn't just be late. The rain had turned into a steady downpour, slicking the road and narrowing my vision. The car stayed behind me, impossibly close now, tail lights glowing like red eyes through the sheets of water. Every instinct screamed to pull over and confront it, but I knew better. Whoever was inside didn't need to show themselves to control me. Then came the first sound from outside the cab. A soft knock against the trailer, muted by the rain, just enough to make my stomach flip. I froze, gripping the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. Another tap, 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 like someone counting seconds, measuring my hesitation. My phone buzzed again. Another message, same unknown number. You're going the wrong way. Wrong way. I checked the GPS. I was on the route I always took, the one I had memorized. The car mirrored every movement I made, every speed change, every lane adjustment. Whoever was in that vehicle didn't just know me, they were anticipating me. A shadow moved past the headlights of the pursuing car, fleeting, impossible to identify. A figure in my trailer? No. Too quick. Too precise. I slammed the brakes hard at the next exit, sliding slightly on the wet asphalt. My chest heaved. The other car stopped behind me, engine idling. No lights inside the cab. No one moved. Then the last message came, flashing across the phone and the truck display at the same time. Open it or lose more than time. I didn't know what to do. Whoever this was, they had me. The trailer, the route, the storm. They had all been a trap I didn't see until the headlights were on me. I realized at that moment that compliance might be the only thing keeping me alive. But even then, I didn't know if survival was guaranteed. Came the scraping from the back of the trailer, deliberate and slow, a reminder that someone, or something, had already crossed the line I wasn't supposed to notice. I understood right then, this wasn't a chase. It was a test, and I was failing. I stayed in the cab for what felt like hours, engine idling, hands trembling, staring at the mirrors. The car behind me hadn't moved, but neither had it approached. The rain hammered down, erasing the road behind it, turning the asphalt into a sheet of silver. Every instinct told me to flee. Every thought reminded me that fleeing might make it worse. Eventually, I eased the truck forward, taking the first exit I could reach. The pursuing car stayed back, waiting. I didn't speed, didn't swerve. I just drove cautiously, trying to put something, anything, between me and those headlights. After a mile, it turned off, slipping into the storm like it had never been there. I didn't stop again until I reached the next town. I parked under a streetlight, engine off, shaking so violently I could barely sit upright. The trailer doors were still sealed. Nothing had shifted inside. On paper, everything was normal. But my hands stayed wet, my chest tight, my mind racing with every knock, every tap, every red light in my mirrors that might have been a warning or a threat. Dispatch called in the morning, asking about my late arrival. I didn't tell them about the car, the messages, the tapping. I just nodded, muttered excuses about the storm, and hung up. Even now, when I drive long routes, I check the rearview mirrors obsessively. Every tailing car, every reflective surface in the storm, makes my stomach twist. Because I know it's not always the weather or the road that wants to control you. Sometimes it's someone or something, following, waiting for the moment you think you're alone. I still drive long routes, but the confidence I used to have on the road is gone. I check mirrors more than the GPS. I slow down even when the schedule demands speed. Every passing car, every shadow in the rain, sets my stomach twisting. I know now that being alone on the highway is an illusion. The messages never came again. The car never returned. The storm eventually passed. On paper, nothing happened. The trailer was intact. The route was completed on time. But the memory of those taps on metal, that cold, patient watching from behind the headlights, stays with me. It lives in the spaces between raindrops and the dark corners of my mirrors. I don't know who it was. I don't know what they wanted. Maybe they were testing me. Maybe they were just proving a point. But I learned something that night. Control can exist without confrontation. Fear can be exacted quietly, invisibly, and it doesn't need witnesses to be effective. Sometimes I wonder about the drivers who came before me, the ones who may have stopped at the wrong time, or the ones who didn't make it at all. I wonder if they understood what it meant to be watched in a way that leaves no trace, only consequence. The worst part isn't the rain, the tapping, or the car. It's knowing that the road doesn't just take. Sometimes it teaches. And the lessons it teaches don't come with guarantees. Only the quiet, lasting knowledge that someone somewhere is always paying attention.